My guest today is a fellow Scandinavian whom I've actually only known for a few months, although I've known her partner who's been working in the EV space for a number of years. In fact, it was her partner that said to me over the Christmas break that I should catch up with her over coffee, perhaps see if we can find some common connections, maybe opportunity to do something together. And my guess, she was just coming back onto the job market after having a child last year. And so we met up for coffee. And for me, after about 10 minutes of the conversation, I was kind of dead set on finding a way to get her to join our team at our consulting company, Enter. I'm really happy to share that she's now a partner in the business. And I'm really pleased to be working with another, really genuine, kind person with an incredible amount of experience to give value to our business and to our clients. Throughout the last 10 years or so, she's worked across the electric vehicle landscape, including for PodPoint out of London. She's worked for EVBox out of Oslo. And more recently, she worked for a stint at Everty in Sydney. So the breadth of her professional background in the EV space, in Australia at least, is pretty difficult to match. Right now, she's packing up to head over to Norway, where she'll be working from over the next few months, which for us, Enter is perfect. It'll be easier to manage some of the client engagements that we have over there or in collaboration with companies in the Nordics. I'm really excited to introduce our 10th guest to the podcast. That's Malin Olsson Volder. Welcome, Malin. How are you today?
Thank you very much. Good, thank you.
That's good.
Yeah, you said that I'm going to Norway. I'm sort of happy with that because it's now getting colder here in Melbourne. Escaping the Melbourne winter for a bit.
Yes, it certainly is. I think in the last day or two, it's been pretty clear that winter is going to come this year again. And no, the insulation is not going to fix itself automatically in these cold Australian homes.
No, I did my best to sort of try to make the house a bit more insulated, but actually it hasn't worked that well.
It's pretty tricky as a renter anywhere in the world to kind of do some of those things you really want to do because you don't want to spend too much money. And it's hard to kind of get the commitment from the landlords to do it sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, first of all, maybe obviously you have an accent, just like I have an accent. Yours is a little bit more, it's a bit different. I mean, I know we grew up probably about 2 hours from each other. You in Oslo, me just on the other side of the border in Sweden. But you have quite a weird accent. Where's that accent inspired from?
Yeah, so half Swedish, half Norwegian. So that's sort of part of it. And I lived 5 years in Copenhagen during my studies. Don't think that has influenced my accent too much, but I was speaking English most of the time there. Then I worked 4 years in London, where I caught a bit of a mixed British accent. So sometimes that sort of comes through. Yes. However, my now Australian partner has influenced me for about 5 years. And to his relief, my accent is turning more and more Australian.
And I'm sure we'll keep shaping that as you work with us as well.
Yes.
Or maybe not. Who knows? I mean, we're Norwegian, French, and Swedish, so it might just end up getting another kind of spin to it. I don't know.
Another layer to the accent, maybe.
Yeah. As I was saying in the introduction before, you've got a pretty impressive background across the EV charging space. You worked for hardware companies over in Europe. You worked with Everty here in Australia. What's been some of those kind of, I guess, real highlights of your career so far? Any particular projects or any particular parts of work that you've really enjoyed over the years?
Yeah, thank you for the very generous introduction as well. Sort of one thing that stands out is being part of the EV industry so early on and playing a part in shaping it. So, for example, installing 6,000 AC chargers together with Renault in Norway, all across Norway, that was a big sort of deal for me once I sort of started my career. And it was pretty exciting thing once you saw the sort of first charger in like a random neighborhood that you were part of installing.
Yeah.
And then at the time, 6,000 chargers was an enormous amount in the scheme of things. Now, probably in Australian standards, 6,000 is pretty big, but in Europe, 6,000 isn't that big anymore.
I was just going to say, I think, I would challenge anyone to name a car manufacturer that's rolled out 6,000 EV chargers across their customer base. Yeah, I don't think that exists here yet. And that was
No.
How long ago in Norway was that?
So that was between 2015 and 2018.
Wow.
So
wow.
it was over 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible.
And then later on, delivering several DC charging projects within the heavy duty vehicle segment. So we're moving over from not just the home charge market, but also having sort of an impact on the different segments, which was also very exciting and fun to and a new challenge to take on as well.
Did you find that the type of work you were doing in that space was very, very, very different from the AC space, like in terms of what the customer experience would look like, or what the installation process would look like? Any particular reflections on how they're different?
Definitely different in terms of what the customer is expecting, but it's more to sort of understand what the customer wants. So that was similarity. And yeah, with the AC bit and home charging, you could sort of make a package and say, like, this is the standard package, and in most cases you sort of within the package, or just like a couple of meters longer cable or something similar to that. However, with the commercial side of things, you couldn't do that because every location was different. So you had to go in and make a quote every time. There's also differences in terms of the charges. Obviously, the home market, you sort of only have like a spectrum of AC chargers that you can install. On the DC side of things, you need to look at the vehicle, the type of location, the capacity, all of that you need to take into consideration before you sort of find the right match.
Yeah, and I guess you're including some of those network interfaces and interactions too.
Yeah, and also what the companies were using the vehicles for, like were they also staying there for a while, or were they just going in and out 24/7? It has a very different type of setup depending on the customer you're talking to, or depending on the different locations, which was very, very interesting and challenging at the same time.
Yeah. No, it must be interesting to get a bit of a mix of experience across those two worlds too. Yeah, it would probably add to your arsenal of thinking of problems and finding solutions for clients.
Absolutely. Yeah. But
sorry, please go.
The most important thing was sort of understanding what the customer was after, and that goes for both segments really. That you need to identify what are the sort of key things that the customer needs, and then make sure that you nail those things.
Yeah, gotcha. Just a follow-up question, and this probably comes a little bit without warning. But do you have any particular thoughts on? I sometimes think about DC charging as being a potential option in the residential space in the future, to kind of unlock a little bit more power for homes. I know there's a lot of people out there that when they buy, say, a 3-phase AC charger, that they expect then to be able to charge the car at 22 kilowatts as the label says, but obviously the onboard charger on cars tends to be much smaller, and perhaps limit that to 7 or 11 kilowatts instead. Do you have any particular thoughts on, do you think that DC charging is an alternative for homes, maybe just for normal charging, or for, I guess, vehicle to home, vehicle to grid type application in the future?
People were sort of looking into that in the European market as well, or you had residential sites that were asking for DC chargers, but once they had the investment costs of a DC charger, they quickly went, that's not for us.
Mm.
So unless it becomes very cheap, or if there is, let's say, there's been a couple of cases where I was part of installing a DC charger, but then it was in a residential area where there was loads of apartment buildings. So they were sort of sharing the investment cost, or that it was a CPO that went in and did the investment.
Yeah.
And there's definitely possibilities, but I wouldn't say that that is a huge market because it's a big cost. You also realize once you start driving an EV that most of the time your car actually sits in the parking lot like 90% of the time. And maybe there's a slight difference here in the Australian market. You probably know that better than me, but most cases when people start driving, they realize that the charger that they have at home, or that they have the possibility of installing at home, is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So,
true. It's one of those kind of things where at the surface you go, well, wouldn't it be great if we can enable, as fast charging as possible for people at home? But you're absolutely right. I've just been a few days without power in my garage because of a faulty subboard, and for me, I very much come to the realization just how dependent I am on having a charger installed here at home. But it's that I definitely don't need any more power than this, because having a single phase 7 kilo or even less, I've got a 25 amps restriction on mine, is more than enough. And we'll give you a fully charged car every morning, right? Which is you don't need more than that.
no, the only thing that I could think of, obviously you have DC chargers that are a bit lower in terms of power and investment costs, and you could potentially put that in. But then now that the DC chargers are also your sort of high power chargers, like stopping at I don't know if that is a shopping mall or if it's your work, or I don't know where you do your grocery shopping, or if there's a charger there and it does 150 kilowatts or not even that, you usually sort of fine. You usually don't actually need that much more. And then there might be rare cases where there's an opportunity where you can potentially install, for example, a 25 kilowatt DC charger.
Yeah.
But it's more on the sort of commercial side of the things where you have, I don't know, let's say what's called Australia Post or Post Australia would be one example where they have cars going in and out and they need sort of just a quick top up.
Yeah,
that might be it. But
yeah. No, it's interesting. It's and I think that kind of opportunistic charging is perhaps not something we see heaps of in Australia yet. We're starting to see, sure, there's the odd shopping center here and there, and some grocery stores getting EV charging, but it's quite limited. But we're following the rest of the world, I think, on that. And when you visit Oslo, you can certainly see that kind of diversity of charging that occurs. Whether it's integrated into the parking meter or on the light pole at every type of shop you can imagine. It's that's the kind of future we'll see in Australia and New Zealand soon too, I think, in the next few years.
Absolutely. And I think also on the commercial side of things, you will probably see that companies will ask for a DC charger and high power DC charger, but then they realize later on when someone explains it to them that they don't necessarily need that. So most people would think I need high power and I need it as quick as possible, but once you actually start driving, you don't.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. Hey, as on the topic of Norway, and Norway is of course like the North Star when it comes to adopting electric vehicles and successfully kind of transitioning to that kind of future. this is probably a question you've had many times before, and certainly one I've been asked a few times, and I probably can't answer it as well as you. But how did Norway actually go about kind of achieving that legend status of, what's now more than 90% EV sales?
Yeah, I've had that question many times. Basically, Norway put in really good EV incentives, so mainly good tax policy. So having being exempt from 25% VAT when the vehicles in Norway are quite expensive, that is a massive cut on the bill of so that helped quite a lot. And also in the beginning you had free use of toll roads, you had free parking, you had free charging, you had access to bus lanes, among loads of other things. And then once the uptake in Norway came, or the uptake was pretty high, then they sort of have cut down on some of these incentives. So you pay for toll roads, but you pay less. You pay for charging, but there's still available chargers all over the most actually city centres, and you see it also in the sort of outskirts of Norway, where you had ferries, and there were free ferries, for example, with EVs, and you have access to bus lanes, but now they've cut it down. So when there's in the mornings or in the afternoons, you can't, or you have to be 2 passengers in the car, that sort of thing, which has a huge impact on the uptake of EVs. And I'm pretty sure that these incentives came because we wanted to start our own production in Norway, and then that never happened, or as in it never took off. However, then suddenly Nissan Leaf came to the market, and loads of people saw that, oh, I can actually buy a car, it's not that expensive, and they like, there's low maintenance costs on this, I'm not paying much for charging or parking or anything else, so it's actually very cost beneficial for me.
Yeah, that's right. I remember those early days too, of seeing those. I can't remember the brand, but the sort of almost like smart sized kind of cars, very sort of micro car sort of concepts, a little bit sort of square, all over the streets of Norway when I was younger. And I'm happy that they inspired a lot of that policy that have had such a big impact on Norway and the rest of the world. But I'm not too surprised that they didn't become the next big thing.
No, they didn't. It was Buddy and Think, I think they were called.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, very cool.
I wouldn't necessarily say that they're very road safe in terms of driving on a highway. Wouldn't feel too secure in that.
They wouldn't necessarily get a 5-star safety rating.
No. Not at all.
Yeah. Hey, so like we're really lucky to have you on the Enter team now as one of the 3 partners in the business, and obviously we're in the sort of early stages of building this new company. What's that like for you to kind of, I guess, come in really early in the company, help shape it? What is it? Daunting, scary, just fun, exciting? What's going through your head? Or because it's only been about a month or 2.
Thank you. No, it's great. It's not really scary at all. It's just exciting. I really enjoy being part of building a business. I've been doing that a couple of times before, but not that early on. So it's exciting to sort of be part of the process this early on, but also especially with partners that have the same concern in terms of the environment, and also that comes from a very different background, so that I can learn from your experiences and knowledge while helping businesses enter Australia, which is great, because we're sort of helping shape the Australian market, but also while setting up our own business. Which is super exciting.
It's fun, that part of kind of figuring out, like as you said, like figuring out how we complement each other as a team. We do have quite different backgrounds, the three of us, although we have a lot of similarities too, like being from, always being from different parts of Europe originally. And I think it's kind of fun to sort of tie our, backgrounds from being from there to kind of, building this business and kind of leveraging the fact that, Norway and Sweden in particular, very much leading when it comes to EV adoption, which is super exciting. How can we transfer some of that knowledge across from that part of the world to Australia? Because we've got a fair bit of catching up to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also good to sort of having the same concerns about the environment. So that obviously in other larger companies, you don't, even though your sort of end goal is to make the world a better place, not everybody is in the company with the same sort of concern for the environment, or don't necessarily care about it, or a job is a job. But here I feel like we're actually doing this because we want to make it a better place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that relates a lot to me and my
That's good.
So that's good.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. No, it's important to have, I think not just that kind of passion for, I mean, consulting is great because it's I think it's a really great way of learning new things and, meeting new people, learning about innovation, that kind of stuff. That's really, I think, the really positive thing about consulting. And I think if you're able to kind of, turn it into something where you work with good people, you work on creating impact together, and you work on something that helps kind of achieve goals that really kind of ticks the boxes of what you want to do with your life, it can become really profound. And so I think it's important for us, the three of us, to make sure we keep that as something that's really important as we build the company over the next few years.
Oh, 100%.
Now, for European companies, how do you think that we as a business can help them sort of see the opportunity and, I guess, make their entry into Australia and New Zealand as smooth and successful as possible? Oh, that sounds a little bit like I'm trying to get you to enter to our listeners, but maybe I am. But where do you think that this kind of, how do you think we as individuals can actually help those people from around the world?
So I think you posted something on LinkedIn where you said car sales in February 2024, and it was car sales in Norway and Australia in February 2024. And if you look at that, and Norway having the highest EV adoption rate in the world, and the percentage of all vehicles sold in Norway in February was 90.1, were all BEVs. And then you compare that to Australia, which is only 9.6% of all cars in the same month. And you think, okay, Norway has a massive adoption on EVs, Australia hasn't. Why should we sort of enter Australia? There's not really a big market there. But then when you flick it around and you talk about the actual numbers, and Australia then having sold 10,000 cars compared to 6,700 cars in Norway, then you sort of realize how big the market in Australia is, and why there's a large untapped market just waiting for the taking. And in terms of, I would say for us, it's our joint knowledge and experiences and boots on the ground, both in Australia, but also me then working out of Norway for a few months of the year, we can then help European companies establish themselves in Australia and New Zealand. And obviously there's no sort of one size fits all. So whatever European companies have done in Europe it's not necessarily the same thing over here. So having someone that already knows the Australian market, have experience with the Australian market, has connections, is very beneficial when you're trying to start up a company in a new country.
Yeah, absolutely. Good points there. I think you met my challenge, but that's the thing, right? It's like we're so far from Europe in terms of time zones. Like, at the moment it's 8 hours. A couple of weeks ago it was 10-hour difference, which kind of just makes it practically a lot more difficult, right?
Yeah.
Why do you want to set up in Australia when perhaps you haven't, grown fully into Europe or other parts of the world that might seem a little bit easier to practically roll into? And I think that's, I think for us, having you in Norway, a few months every year is going to be fantastic, because it just means we can have that sort of close contact. Plus, we speak the same language as some of our clients, hopefully in the future, which is really great. And I think, the really good thing actually about being, far away from our clients sometimes too, is that, you might have a weekly catch up to kind of check in on your progress. And it kind of means for us, though, that the whole day is essentially open for us to deliver on that work, for us as a team to get together and collaborate and create that output for the client, as opposed to, sometimes working perhaps too close with, as a consulting company, with clients. And so I think having that space is probably a good thing for us as well.
And having worked in Europe and sort of I worked towards the Norwegian market and then in Norway. However, I worked for a UK company, and then the head office for the other company was in the Netherlands. And sort of seeing, even though you can think that there's if you know how to do it in Norway, you can do it sort of in the Netherlands or in the UK. But there are always like nuances with or differences with the countries, even though in Europe. So even, just sort of I don't know how installers work. They work differently in the UK to the Netherlands to Norway to Sweden. And even the two markets or two countries that are pretty close to each other, things are different. The grid is different. How sort of partners interact is different. So having that knowledge is, I'd say, key for companies that are entering Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, awesome. And I think for us too, it's really great to be having have a close partner in New Zealand as well that can really help us when it gets, more deep and requiring localization and local knowledge. So we've got a great partner in Rob Spears at Decarb for that. On the other side of that coin, I guess helping European companies come to Australia, we sometimes we'll do work the other way around, where we might be working with Australian companies wanting to learn from I guess world leaders in EV adoption, like Australian, like Norway and Sweden, or Finland for that matter, or Denmark. I don't want to generalize too much, but how can we kind of best, I guess, help Australian companies learn from those world leaders?
So sort of similar to what I said earlier, that there's no copy pasting. However, there are obviously learnings that has been done in these countries that you can sort of take a framework and say, okay, this is sort of what works. And then take that to Australia, and then just add on the sort of Australian bits so that it fits the market, and then you should be able to be good to go.
For example, with perhaps particular types of EV charging infrastructure having been rolled out, or particular commercial models that have been done over there, I guess in a way we can kind of look at examples over there and say, okay, well, doing it this way didn't work because of X, but it might work in Australia because we've got a different structure of the market. Or
So for example, the whole setup with providing a standard sort of installation package, that might be a good idea to implement here. And that you have this, like, okay, you know how a switchboard looks like. It looks similar in every house. There might be a few differences here and there. Normally you can cover, if you say 10 meters to like the parking lot, this is just an example, but that sort of covers it. But then there might be other things that you're like, oh no, but then now or in Australia you have loads of solar, which means that you have to sort of implement that into this potential package that you want to connect it to the solar panels. While that isn't necessarily a factor, or that isn't a big factor in Norway, some people have it, or in Sweden, but it's not a huge part of it. So you can sort of look at these segments or these sort of setups, either how CPOs have done it or energy utility companies have done packaging together, maybe a charger with like their deal, for example, on other things. And then sort of, okay, we can do something similar here. We can't do exactly the same thing, but if we tweak it in these ways, then it will work over here.
Yeah.
No,
it is interesting just to kind of see some of those differences between the markets and just how far ahead, particularly Norway and Sweden is when it comes to some of these technologies. Just a final question for you on the topic of technologies. What makes you most excited about the, I guess, sort of energy and EV transition of the next few years? Any particular, I don't know, any particular technology, innovation, trends that you're really excited about?
I'm very excited about my job not being sort of a novelty anymore over here, that you have to explain EV, you have to say electric vehicles. I'm looking forward to when it's just a normal thing, like people know about it. You don't have to explain yourself or explain what you're doing. It's not a weird thing anymore. And then a second thing that I'm looking forward to is when there's more heavy duty electric vehicles on the road, because it means that you can sort of change the private market, and that probably goes a bit quicker. However, it doesn't have as much impact on the emissions. So getting heavy duty vehicles over to EV is essential, and I'm looking forward to when that happens in a sort of larger scale than what it is at the moment, because it's only a sort of tinkering away here, and it will have the biggest impact. And I live close to a pretty busy road, and I've sort of tried to figure out how much emissions it is around here due to that road. I haven't found anything, but it's interesting how in Norway, for example, if the emissions are too high, they close off kindergartens, for example, then the kids aren't allowed to go outside. However, here you don't even know what the levels are, and you have school and the kindergarten just next to the road. So getting those vehicles over to electric is essential, so that it also is better for the sort of not environment just in general, but also sort of very localized local environment as well.
Yeah, got you. And like it's amazing what a difference it makes to a city or a community or a suburb when it's largely electrified. I mean, Norway and Oslo again is a great example of this. Like when you're in the middle of Oslo on a summer day, it's not the traffic that you hear. It's people that are out chatting. You'll have the occasional scooter zipping past and electric bicycles and normal bicycles. But I think Australia's got a lot to learn when it comes to, I guess, facilitating transport systems that make a city more livable, because it's a really important thing. And I think there's nothing worse than the sort of the sounds of heavy buses or vehicles with their sort of diesel engines braking. I share your enthusiasm about that industry and hopefully playing a part in electrifying that in Australia too.
Yeah, and we could obviously, oh God, I could continue on this as well, but or forever. But if you if you also get in self-driven cars, you don't need as much parking spaces anymore. With electric vehicles, there's no issue sort of living close to a very busy road because sound isn't that high. It also isn't that much pollution. Obviously, there will still be some, but then you're taking away loads of these things that also means more people, these places would be more attractive to live in.
Yeah, absolutely.
While
Yeah.
at the moment, most people don't want to live there.
Yeah.
And it might be sort of the ones that are unfortunate and don't have an option that has to live there.
It's an interesting point. Maybe we both know how much Australians love property, the property sector, and the value of homes. And so maybe that's one of the things we should look at, is maybe create something where we can quantify the benefit in increasing home value around certain parts of cities by electrifying heavy transport.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's see if we can get some funding for that.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Super nice to have a chat, and I'm sure I'll speak to you again before the end of the weekend, but not in a podcast format.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, and
Of course.
we'll speak soon. Thanks, Malin.
Thank you.